Alright, I think we're off and running. Welcome back to Term 2, Year 8. Today, what we're going to do is just a quick introduction to our topic for this term, which is body systems. Now, these slides are going to be a little bit text dense, but I will be walking through it quite slowly just so that you can completely understand what's going on here. Okay, so today's lesson is sort of just an introduction as to what we're going to be doing for this topic so that you have a good understanding of what to expect. So let's get straight into it. If it works, there we go. What are we learning about this in this topic? So we're learning about our body systems. So we're learning about ourselves. We're learning about how our body works. We are learning about what makes up our body, and we are learning about the things that go into and out of our body to make us work. So in that regard, we're sort of thinking about things like food, things like water, and the gases that we exchange with our environment. So carbon dioxide and oxygen. So one of the things that we learn in this particular topic is about a thing called photosynthesis and a thing called respiration. Now, you might have heard something about that before, and it's something that we're going to cover in this topic. So, yeah, let's continue on. What is a body system? When we start out in science, we like to think of our body as a collection of cells. Now, you guys learned about cells last year, and most of you would have created a cell model. But frankly, the thing that we don't really think about too much is that our cells are often quite specialized. Now, our specialized cells usually come together to create a tissue. Now, by tissue, I mean something like our skin tissue. I mean something like our stomach tissue. I mean something like the tissue that makes up our digestive tract tissue. These tissues all sort of come together, just like tissues from imagine that you have tissues in a tissue box, and you get all those tissues and you put them around a balloon with glue, and suddenly you have a paper mache, but frankly, in this case, we're talking about an organ. So these tissues come together to create an organ. Now, those organs, you probably know what an organ is, but just for an example, you know what the stomach is. You know probably what a small intestine is or a large intestine. You probably know what your lungs are. Your lungs. These are all body systems that work together to make us an organism. And notice that I've sort of put organism in capitals there, and that's just to re-emphasize that point that we're called an organism because we have organs, and those organs are all working together to make sure that we are living and that we're able to be alive. Now, here are a couple of examples of our body systems. Now, I found this image from the internet. I thought it was really good. Here's a couple. So, for example, in this first one here, hopefully you can see my cursor. This one here, take a think about what that is. Now, I can't actually see you there, but I think most of you would have said that this is a skeleton. And yes, this is the skeletal body system. This is the skeleton. And the skeleton holds us all together, makes sure that we have a backbone and we have things that make sure our body has structure. Moving over to this one, have a think about what this is. We have this big red thing in the middle, and then we have, it might be a bit hard to see, but we have this yellow line coming down here and all these little other yellow lines coming out from that. Now, this is our nervous system. Now, these nerves make sure that our bodies have the sensation of sense, and we can transmit signals from, you know, things that come into contact with our body and send it to the brain so the brain can process it. The next one here, probably a pretty easy one. We have our heart. We have all of these arteries and veins coming off this. This is our circulatory system. Now, the circulatory system makes sure that we are able to effectively transmit nutrients and gases around our body, as well as wastes. This one here is our respiratory system. Because we got our lungs, we have our throat, or we have our what we would call our esophagus, and we have our mouth. Here, have a think about what this is. Most of you probably say that that is our digestive system because it has our stomach here, has our liver, has our small intestine and our large intestine. And then the last one here is our skeleton, sorry, not our skeleton, our muscular system. Now these are all systems that our body uses to make us work. And this isn't all of them too. There are a lot of different ones that we're going to be looking at over the next couple of weeks and that you should get some sort of familiarity with by the end of it. So what is an example of a body system? We've kind of just gone through that. An example could be the digestive system, and the digestive system works to help us digest food so that we can get the nutrients that we need to survive. And Pusheen down here is enjoying a pizza, sometimes what we like to do. And the digestive system helps us get the nutrients, if there are any in that pizza, out of it so that we can actually use them. So looking at the big picture as to what the key concepts are in this topic. The first one is that cell division plays an important role in growth, repair, and reproduction of multicellular organisms. Now, the word multicellular organisms is what we are. We have more than one cell. If it was a unicellular organism, that would mean one cell. Cell division, not too sure if you've heard of it or not, but that's mitosis or meiosis, but we're going to focus on mitosis. Mitosis plays an important role by making sure that our cells can divide, and that when we, for example, get a cut, that our body can make new cells so that we can survive and we don't have to have that wound anymore. The next key concept is that body systems in organisms work together. So none of these organ systems or body systems work in isolation. They don't work together. They wouldn't survive very well through a quarantine, for example. They all work together to make sure that we are living and breathing and doing everything that we need to do to survive. Another one of the key concepts is the roles that the major organ systems play in the body, and we'll learn more about that. What are we going to be able to do by the end of this topic? Ideally, this is what we want to do, and now I know that this list is quite extensive, but it's basically what we're going to be looking at over the next 5 weeks. So bear with me, and I'm going to go through it nice and slowly for you. We are going to be able to state the word equations for respiration and photosynthesis. So we're going to learn a bit about respiration and photosynthesis and be able to talk about what goes into and out of these processes. We're going to be able to explain where multicellular organisms obtain the materials required for respiration and photosynthesis. So where do we get these things from? We're going to be able to order the organization from cells to systems. Now, at the start of the presentation, I talked to you about cells and how they created a tissue, and then how those tissues went to create an organ. Now, that's the thing that we're talking about there. We are going to be able to explain how systems work together to provide cell requirements and be able to provide a specific example of that, for example. So, for example, we might be able to talk about the digestive system and how the digestive system produces or gives us the opportunity to get things like carbohydrates and fats and proteins and use those things for energy, because our cells require energy to function. If they didn't get energy, we wouldn't be able to survive. We are going to be able to outline the role. So what is the role of cell division in growth, repair, and reproduction in multicellular organisms? We're going to be able to describe the main roles of a flower, a stem, a leaf, a root, and the body system of a flowering plant. So we're not just looking at human body systems or animal body systems, we're also going to have a look at plants. And that'll be brief, but it's just a bit of a starting point to see how much we know about plants and to give you a bit of an idea, because later in the year we're going to be doing things with plants and we're going to learn a little bit more in depth about plants. And plants are really, really interesting. They cover most of the earth, except for, of course, regions where there's no plants like deserts, or less plants like deserts. We're going to be able to describe the role of the circulatory system. We're going to be able to describe the role of the skeletal system. We're going to be able to describe the role of the muscular system, digestive system, excretory system, so getting rid of wastes there, the respiratory system, which is, of course, our lungs. We're going to be able to describe the role of the human reproductive system. So this might be new for some people, but what is it that lets us reproduce? That's an important part. If you remember your Mrs. Gren, and I feel like a lot of you might remember Mrs. Gren from year 7, that little acronym that you created. Being able to reproduce is one of the key things that lets us know that we're alive. So we're going to learn a bit about the female and the male reproductive systems and how they sort of come together to make sure that we're able to reproduce and stay alive. You might be asking yourself, why does this learning matter? Why do we have to learn this, Mr. Bizet? Why is it important? Well, frankly, it's important so that you gain an understanding of how your body works. We want you to be able to know the things that are in your body so that you are able to understand them. And looking at a broader picture sort of thing, some of you may go on to become nurses or even doctors, that sort of thing. This is the first stepping stone that you might get into learning about those particular organ systems. And it's not going to be 100% relevant for everyone, but I think it's really important to learn about our body systems and how they work. And that's why I think this topic is great. This content is fundamental for future learning. So looking past just year 8, looking into year 9 and year 10, learning about infectious diseases and genetics, really important for that. Also really important for HSC learning. So biology, for example, you're going to learn a lot about these systems in depth. This is sort of like the first stepping stone that we take. All right, have a think. I'm going to read this out to you. I want you to have a think. What are the things that you think of when we start to look at these paragraphs? Now, these contain a lot of key words. Now, these keywords are going to come up time and time again in this topic, so it's good that we learn them. Living systems are made up of systems that work together for the best chance of survival. Systems in plants support photosynthesis, using sunlight to produce energy and oxygen. Systems in animals take in food and process it to produce energy and to support gas exchange, waste removal, sexual reproduction, and more. Organisms have evolved over billions of years, becoming extremely complex over this time. When we investigate and learn about these systems, we discover the many intricate parts and functions of a living cell and how they work together in multicellular organisms. So really, we're learning about we haven't learned a lot about evolution just yet, but it's one of those things that's going to pop up again and again in your schooling life, so it's good to start learning about it now. We've evolved over billions of years, and we sort of started out as quite simple organisms. We didn't have the ability to do too much, but over time we evolved and we became more complex, and we divvied up those roles into different organ systems so that we're more efficient. In this example, think about a jack of all trades versus a master of one. So in the jack of all trades example, we might have a tradie, and the jack of all trades, he's pretty good at everything. He's pretty good at metalwork, he's pretty good at timber, he's pretty good at welding. He has a bit of a knack for everything. Probably could come and renovate your house all right, but he's not really an expert in any of these fields. He doesn't know everything about those particular fields. Now, think about the master of one now. We have one guy. He's a plumber. He knows everything about his particular system. He knows everything to do with it. He could do anything that you ask him to do about plumbing, but only plumbing in particular. Our body systems are a bit like this master of one. Each one of those organs has a particular use and is masterful at one of those particular uses. Whereas, when we put most of those experts together, they create those body systems. So we have the plumber working with the electrician, working with the, I don't know, carpet layer, working with the general handyman as well. Like, there's still room for the general handyman there. So all of those things are working together to create a body system that works. So these are some of the notes I wanted you to take. Body systems are incredibly important to our survival. So feel free to like pause this and write this down. If one body system fails, it may mean that other body systems begin to fail as well. We are incredibly complex organisms with a variety of body systems that keep us alive. What do we do now? I think we've gone over everything that we need to go over to get you started on this topic, to give you a really good idea about what we're doing. What we would ask you to do now, if you can manage it, I know we're having some problems with Style at the moment, but hop onto Style, see if you can complete that introductory lesson, as well as the 2 other lessons. And now the first lesson there is the digestive system. I'll try and create a video as soon as I possibly can about the digestive system, but this is sort of just to get started. Complete the introductory style on lesson on style. Of course, you can go back through any part of this PowerPoint and you can take notes if you really want to. Now, some of them are going to be really important. If you wanted to take notes, I would take these notes down. I would take these notes down. Like, why is it important that we're doing this? You could even take something like, you could even copy that down as well if you really wanted to. It gives you a really good understanding about what we're starting off with. Of course, if you have any questions about what we talked about today, feel free to flick me an email. Feel free to ask a question on Google Classrooms. Otherwise, I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. I hope it makes sense. If something doesn't make sense, please ask, because I definitely want to help out. When we start to get into the digestive system and photosynthesis and respiration and that sort of stuff, this is sort of like our first stepping stone. All right, it's something that we can refer to if we really need to. All right, hope you've enjoyed it. I'm going to stop it there. 17 minutes is a bit of time. I hope it hasn't been too bad, I guess.